Hey guys, I want to do something a little bit different with today's video. I've been getting a lot of messages recently from people that are going through challenges, whether they're health challenges or, they're kind of struggling with motivation, things like that. So I wanted to share a story about a time in my life where I had to overcome some big challenges, and it was not a great time for me. So I figured by me sharing this, hopefully, it can help some of you and inspire some of you to overcome your challenges, whatever you're going through at this point in time in your lives. So the year was 2012, and just kind of to set the stage a little bit. 2011, I didn't lose a strongman contest. I had the best year of my life, basically. Won World's Strongest Man, won the Arnold Classic, won every other contest that I entered in 2011. And so to say I was on top of the world and kind of felt invincible is a little bit of an understatement. I felt great. So going into 2012, I was looking to do the exact same thing. I didn't think that I would lose any contests in 2012. And I went to the Arnold Classic in 2012, detached my bicep on the very first event of that contest. I completed the rest of the Arnold Classic with my bicep detached, ended up getting fourth place, and from there I needed to go have my bicep reattached. So had the surgery, everything went great with the surgery. I felt great, waited the full time period before I started training. Got back into my training, and at that point in time, I was super motivated for World's Strongest Man to defend my title in 2012. And I coming back from the surgery, all my training was on point. I was feeling great. Basically hitting all personal records before the World's Strongest Man contest in 2012. Now, the turning point before that contest came about 2 to 3 weeks before that contest, and I started to lose feeling in my left hand, and I just kind of chalked it up to sleeping wrong. It's kind of my hand would go to sleep. I'd wake up in the morning, and it just started taking longer and longer for my hand to wake up, and I didn't think much of it until I started to lose some function in my hand. So before that contest, I started really struggling with being able to make my fingers move. They were tingly almost all day, and I really was scared about the situation. But because I was so close to World's Strongest Man, I just pushed through and went to World's Strongest Man. I got through the qualifiers just fine, without much trouble, but I knew that I was in trouble because my hand wasn't functioning the way that it should be. So I don't remember exactly what point in that contest I started to completely lose feeling in my hand, but I did. And so it got to the point during that contest where I had to have help to get dressed for every event. So I could no longer make my fingers move to tie my shoes. I couldn't get my supportive gear on. It was really bad. And so instead of letting all the other competitors see that I was struggling that badly, I would get dressed completely in my room with help, and then go out to compete and just have all my gear on, and basically say, oh, I just threw it on early, whatever, because I didn't want to show weakness. I didn't want to show the other guys that I was struggling that bad and I was in a really bad spot where my hand wasn't working. So I fought as hard as I possibly could in the 2012 World's Strongest Man. There's particular events that I remember specifically. One is the truck pull. It was a terrible feeling, but I was reaching out to grab the rope to pull, and I physically could not sense essentially grabbing the rope. So I would look at my hand, and I remember, thinking, okay, I've got a hold of the rope, but I couldn't tell if I was touching the rope or not. Obviously not a good thing for pulling a truck. Hurt me really badly in that event. We had a natural stone loading event that year, and if any of you have ever played with a natural stone, picking it up, you need to be able to feel kind of grooves and crevices and things like that to pick stones up. I couldn't tell if my hand was touching the stone or where it was touching the stone. Really frustrating. The deadlift event, I remember I literally didn't have the strength in my hand to keep my strap on the bar. So I had somebody help me strap in before the event started. And then, I got through the reps that I did, and at that point I could not lift anymore because I couldn't make my fingers close anymore on the strap. So just a lot of things during that contest were super, super frustrating. And it didn't end, obviously, the way that I wanted it to. But I had a bigger problem than my finish at World's Strongest Man. I now had a hand that wasn't functioning and that I'd lost feeling in. So I went back home, and as a lot of you can probably imagine, I didn't really know where to start. I had a massive problem that didn't just go away because I was done competing. Now we started to look at like quality of life, essentially. And things got from that point on got worse very, very quickly. So I started having big problems with normal things in life. I remember I couldn't pick up a frying pan any longer. I couldn't twist a doorknob because I had lost so much strength in my hand. I couldn't do even the simplest things like clipping my fingernails. I remember I could not take a pair of clippers and put it on my fingernail. I didn't have enough strength left in my hand to even squeeze to clip my own fingernails. So as you can imagine, from a mental standpoint, that was not good for me. It was not a good position to be in, and I was really questioning what was happening, and I was trying desperately to find solutions. So in that time period after World's Strongest Man, I went to several different doctors. Everybody was trying to figure out what was going on, and nobody could give me a solid answer about what exactly the problem was. All they knew was that it was a nerve issue. So I'd have 4 different MRIs done, because when you have a pinched nerve, it can be anywhere basically from your neck going down that side of my body into my arm, and the effects of a pinched nerve only show up at the end of the chain. So my hand having all the issues, that's where everything was showing up. So we went all the way up. Nothing could be 100% identified. I had nerve conduction tests done, which kind of came back inconclusive. I had some experimental stuff done to me, like a hydrodissection of my nerve, which was not fun. It's just a high pressure water that they shoot into your arm with a really, really long needle. Not comfortable. I had an injection done on my nerve to try to stimulate it. That didn't work. Even trying to remember now, I had so much different stuff done that it was very, very, very frustrating. And none of these tests and none of the things I had done were working to help me. So as you can imagine, now that you understand that situation, I would get up every single morning and, I couldn't even put my own socks on because I couldn't pinch the sock to pull it onto my foot. It was just a very, very low point in time for me, because I was supposed to be one of the strongest men, if not the strongest man in the world. And I now was having trouble getting through normal life because my hand wasn't working. So I just kept, at that point in time, I remember what I tried to do every single day was to try to find something positive to focus on, even if it was literally the smallest thing, like, it was a nice day out, or the sun was shining, or, maybe I was able to get my sock on a little bit better than the day before, or something like that. Anything that I could focus on that would be positive, I would do. Now, I was still trying to train through this time as well, if you know me, I don't skip training. I don't miss training. And, because my hand had started to atrophy so bad, I remember going in certain nights to deadlift, and it was literally like I didn't have enough tissue left in my palm, that it was basically the bones of my hand were on the bar, and it hurt so bad to try to deadlift, but I would try to work through it. Some nights I just had to call it, because it felt like I was going to break my hand or just bruise it so badly, because there just wasn't enough flesh left in my palm to support that deadlifting and that type of thing. But I tried to stay positive. I worked through the situation the best I could. I finally got hooked up with a doctor that could do a nerve conduction test to help me. And he finally identified that I was having basically a blockage at my elbow and a blockage at my wrist. So it's kind of a combined pinched nerve effect, two different nerves there, but it was very, very bad. And because those nerves were so pinched, it was atrophying all my intrinsic hand muscles. So then once that starts to happen, the function of moving your fingers and gripping things, that type of stuff, goes away very quickly. So he referred me then to a surgeon that was one of the best in the world, and I owe a lot to him because he helped me out. And I remember the first day I walked into his office and he looked at me, he said, one of the first things he said to me is, he's like, wow, this is one of the worst things I've ever seen, and you're about 6 months too late. You should have been here 6 months ago when you first started to see some atrophying in your hand, but we're gonna do everything we can to help you out. And at that point in time, we were now into 2013, so I remember specifically, I had the surgery May 1st of 2013, and from that point I had roughly 12 weeks from the day of the surgery until World's Strongest Man started in August of 2013. And I set my goal to win that contest, and I think, you know, a lot of the surgeons and therapists and you know, people that were helping me thought that was pretty crazy. But when I set my mind to do something, I don't take no for an answer, and I just don't accept being mediocre. So I had the surgery. From that point, I had to go into hand therapy, literally to teach my fingers to move again, because I couldn't even do the simplest movements that nobody that has normal hand function ever thinks about. So, you know, just touching your fingers together, picking up little objects, anything like that was such a challenge for me. But I went in, I would sit next to little old ladies and pick up tacks and do all this stuff to get my hand to work again. And then I would go train on top of that. Even though they didn't want me to train, I would train on top of that. And I had my sights set on getting back to and winning World's Strongest Man in 2013, even though there were so many people around me that thought that was nuts, considering the physical condition that I was in. But I, again, just stayed positive. I worked through it the best I possibly could. Every single day I did something to get better, and I was able to not only get to World's Strongest Man and compete, but also to win World's Strongest Man in 2013. So, you know, just that's, you know, obviously a fairly quick run through, but I was at a very low point in 2012, not only with my athletic career, but also with my personal life. A lot of things were going wrong. It was, to say that it was hard to be positive was kind of an understatement. It seemed like everything was kind of falling apart, that things just weren't working. Nothing that I was trying was working. But, you know, there's always that little glimmer of hope that you can find. And there's always, you know, kind of that silver lining in any situation. And now in hindsight, because I had to go through that extreme challenge and I had, you know, my back against the wall essentially in this situation, and I had to fight my way back out of that situation, I'm stronger now. I'm actually thankful for having to go through the situation, and, you know, it made me stronger both mentally and physically. And you know, it's something that, you know, it was a terrible thing to go through, and it was very, very challenging for me, but it made me better. And I, you know, have been through situations like this. This was the worst, you know, as far as my career and you know, like I said, my personal life and a lot of things that were going wrong. It was by far the worst, but it made me grow. It made me get stronger because I had no other choice. I literally had nothing else to do but to overcome that situation. And so, you know, I found it within me to get it done. And I'm very proud of going through that. This is a story that I haven't shared with many people. I've shared it at some of my seminars and things like that. And, I think that it's important to understand that somebody like me that's in the situation that I'm in, having won World's Strongest Man and every major strongman contest, it's not always easy. And I've had to overcome more than my fair share of obstacles along the way to get to where I am. So, in hindsight, some of you are probably asking, why did that nerve issue happen? And it was all from sleeping incorrectly, believe it or not. I was just from when I was a kid, I always slept on my stomach, and after the bicep surgery, I could only sleep with my arm at 90 degrees. And so every single night I was just sleeping on my stomach, and my elbow was just getting crushed into the bed every single night, again and again and again. And eventually, that ulnar nerve just gave up. I mean, because it was just crushed. So that's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother topic, is sleeping correctly. But, if any of you out there are going through that, where you're waking up and your arm is constantly numb, you need to fix your sleeping position and figure out a way to get on your back. Look into a CPAP if you need to. But again, if you're interested in that, comment below. We could do a whole nother sleeping video. That might be something interesting to get into. But anyway, for now, thank you guys for checking out the video. Go out and be great, and we'll check you later.